It is those who listen who will indeed progress. Those who strive for cooperation and mutual benefit will lead the way. For people truly to listen, they must also appreciate that other cultures are not inferior, but simply different, and must be prepared not to just to experience and learn about them, but actually benefit from the rich diversity they bring. Ali bin Abi Talib, the cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad, once said, "Listen and you will teach yourself." This process is never ending because culture is not a static concept. It evolves with time, just like food, maintaining the ingredients, but changing in appearance or emphasis. Therefore, social and political change must be equally evolutionary. Through a balanced understanding of the psychologies at the base of our culture, it becomes possible for us to interact with others with ease and confidence. And cultural exchanges and cooperation are therefore more crucial now than ever before. Oman has long benefited actually and prospered from Indian Ocean trade. In the last year, we have sought to honor that through various projects such as the Jewel of Muscat treasure ship. This project saw the reconstruction of a 9th century Arab dhow, which then sailed to Singapore and was presented to the people there as a royal gift from Oman. It was a symbol of recognition of the value of ancient trade routes and cultural exchanges, and a tribute at the same time to those brave sailors and pioneers gone before us. The reconstruction and the voyage itself symbolize Oman's historical and cultural links to the peoples of the Indian Ocean Rim. The legacy of this voyage is not just the documentaries and the traveling exhibition of National Geographic. Its legacy lies in educating our youth for their heritage. Its mission is to encourage them to really spread their wings. As a great human rights campaigner put it, education is our passport to the future. Many young Omanis have studied and trained both in Oman and abroad. They have learned various languages and skills and have started their own businesses. But as many as 70% of the Arabian Gulf region's population under 30 years of age, the young may be seen by some as a burden. However, to me, their willingness and capacity to commit themselves to success suggests that they are not a burden at all. Rather, this generation represents a great opportunity. We have a responsibility to pass on our values and openness and tolerance, and the need to listen, the need to read, to gain knowledge and skills, understand and appreciate different cultures. And if we do, then we can all see a bright future for our Indian Ocean community. It is particularly in this vein that Oman's relationship with Australia is so important. Oman's ambassador to Australia, as well as the Consulate General in Melbourne, work to ensure strong mutual relations with Australia. They work across all fields of education, trade, and tourism. And in welcoming Omani students to study here in Australia, it is clear that you too share Oman's vision of cultural cooperation. We hope that this cultural event will encourage more visits between our two countries, The path is open for more students, more tourists, business owners to experience for themselves what both of our countries can offer. So really feel free to visit Oman and enjoy our rich and unspoiled landscape. Marvel at the difference in our architecture to high-rise cities elsewhere. I would encourage our Australian friends to consider new partnerships with Omanis. This is much to harness and preserve in our environment. There is much to enhance and develop in terms of our own knowledge, whilst also sharing it. His Majesty Sultan Qaboos wisely said a decade ago, "Today's theories may change tomorrow, and it is imperative that we continually keep up to date with these changes." His words ring truer and truer with each year. This is why education has always been such a priority in Oman. In 1970, Oman's illiteracy rate was a staggering 90%, 90. Now, having expanded from only 3 schools back then to over 1,000 in 2007, Oman's youth literacy rate is up to 97.3%. Nevertheless, as you will all no doubt know better than me, education is a multi-generational process. Oman now has solid foundations from which to work. It can continue to develop a new educational structure to meet the needs of its current and future students' needs. Close collaboration with higher education institutes of the caliber of Sydney University can only serve to facilitate this development. As the World Bank reported in the year 2000, the returns of higher education programs are not immediate. Yet it is also stated that progress is most likely in countries that develop a clear vision of what higher education can contribute to the public good. And we in Oman continue to develop this vision. We hope we can cooperate much more and exchange ideas and experiences with our Australian counterparts. Indeed, the relationship with Australia goes far beyond teaching the Socceroos how to play football. Something we will, of course, be attempting to do so next month when our 2 teams play here in Sydney in World Cup qualifying matches. As you enjoy the smell of frankincense, aspects of our folklore, and the taste of Omani sweets during these cultural days in Sydney, it is important to remember that beneath different cultures lie very similar values and aspirations. Oman's geographical location has furnished its people with a great sense of responsibility and practicality. So, for example, when you know the importance of the Strait of Hormuz, you will see the wisdom of maintaining good diplomatic relations between Oman and Iran. Knowing equally the important role of the United States in world security, we have maintained our friendship there as well. Like Australia, Oman is deeply committed to international solutions to global problems. And we know that such commitment is driving Australia's candidacy for a seat on the United Nations Security Council for 2013-2014. We wish you success in this endeavor. If I may now, I would like to take the opportunity and talk about some of the key development challenges that we are currently facing in Oman. As His Majesty the Sultan continues to push ahead with the process of domestic reform, the development of Oman's human resources remains a key challenge. In parallel with the question of a an increasingly competitive job market and employment. During Oman's oil revenue-driven infrastructural development from the 1970s, public sector employment boomed, but now there is a need for many young people to enter the private sector and succeed in it. Equally, Oman's policy of openness and free market has been in place to boost private sector investment and the development of a small and medium-sized enterprises sector. Local business houses, NGOs, as well as international firms operating in Oman are encouraged to grow, create more jobs, and play a greater role in social responsibility. Oman's decision in 2010 to fix corporate income tax rates at the low level of 12% was aimed to encourage private sector growth and international investment. Well-known firms such as Citibank, Ernst & Young, Deloitte Touche, and Shell have invested heavily in the country, and I'm name dropping here for a purpose. As Oman contemplates a post-carbon future, it is clear that education remains central. Omani universities need to attract the best researchers and teachers to best equip the youth for their globalized world they are living in. As youngsters face these challenges, so the country itself must preserve its economic attractiveness. To address this with pragmatism, Oman continues to be an active participant in bilateral, in regional, and in international forums. For example, in the Gulf Cooperation Council, we support economic integration policies between the 6 member states. This organization, as some of you might know, has been evolving since 1981 into a common market. We live in challenging economic times, with all countries facing cuts and austerity. But the key is to take measures that do not compromise the values that our societies hold dear. We have a saying in Oman that goes something like this: his pockets may be empty, but his clothes are fresh and ironed. And although here I'm talking about investment and business, this generation must be careful not to be overwhelmed with material considerations. All in all, this is a relevant matter to Australian pragmatism. Businesses are going to play an even more central part in the future. Geography and borders no longer represent barriers to trading and investment. Australian pragmatism will no doubt recognize the potential in developing new partnerships with Oman, with the Gulf, and of course with the countries of the Indian Ocean. Earlier this year, Oman and Australia signed a memorandum of understanding on air travel. The aim is to provide regular flights between Muscat and the cities of Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Perth. I guess the Indian Ocean is now far smaller than the 9th century world we tried to explore with our treasure ship. Further evidence of this realization comes in the form of the Australian Oman Business Council. This particular council was formed in 2010 as the incorporated association. Its mission is to promoting bilateral business, trade, interest, and investment between Australia and Oman. In 2009, a free trade agreement between Oman and the United States came into being. It has resulted, as expected, in more exchange, more partnership, and more investment. Due to our membership of the GCC, we also have such agreements with Singapore and the European Free Trade Association. Australia represents one of the countries with whom we are negotiating the terms of a future agreement. There are so many reasons and opportunities to invest in Oman. I believe that Australia is on the cusp of realizing this. We can see a bright and mutually beneficial partnership developing. And as it is a partnership we are seeking, Oman is also actively exploring opportunities of investments in Australia. And in 2009, I am pleased to say that Oman Investment Fund forged a partnership with the Beckton Property Group in Australia. This emphasis on mutual benefit and education is supported by His Majesty Sultan Qaboos's decision to endow a chair at the Melbourne University. The Sultan of Oman Chair in Arabic and Islamic Studies is currently held by Professor Abdullah Sayyid, and his work focuses on Islam in contemporary Australia. Oman and Australia's partnership has therefore been germinating for some time now. I hope that this event will facilitate it blossoming further into our future. The Sultanate of Oman has developed beyond all recognition in the last 40 years. The figures to do with infrastructure, healthcare, and education all speak for themselves. Yet they do not make us a developed nation. Rather, we are at a crossroads. In the past year, Oman has received many acclamations of her progress. The UN's Human Development Index, covering about 40 years in the past, placed us first among all their member states. In January, we were visited by the US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and she publicly observed that Oman's real success was the focus on improving people's lives. We are proud of these numbers and these statements, the statistics, the league tables, but what I glean from them is not the sense of a job well done, but rather a job or a good start. We have still a long way to go. As the great Australian tennis player Rod Laver used to say, the time your game is most vulnerable is when you are ahead. Never let up. Oman now has the foundations for development with far loftier goals than those set in 1970. Yet what Omanis have learned from the process is how much more there is to gain from further exchanges and cooperation with other cultures. By being here today, you have already shown us that you share this belief. I hope very much that Oman's Cultural Days in Sydney represent a new momentum for a prosperous future between our two great countries. Thank you very much for listening.